Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning from those of you that have joined from the States. Thank you for joining today's webinar in partnership with the MEDIS. We're talking about global payroll and HCM integration, the process and the benefits. So today we have Dave Muldoon and Will Murphy. So I'll let Dave and Will introduce themselves shortly. Just to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat box or the Q&A part of the software. And if we get a chance, we'll answer them towards the end of the webinar. If not, I'm sure Dave and Will answer them post-webinar. So thanks once again. I'm now going to pass you over to Dave.
Thanks, Mel. Hi, everybody. Delighted to be here today for this presentation. I'll just briefly show the rough agenda that we want to follow today. And our intention today is really to make this as practical as we can for the audience that is listening. Will and I, and we'll talk a little bit about our introductions in a second, but Will and I have spent the last 4 years working with all of the top HCM providers globally. We've also worked with many of our customers to implement HCM integration and other integrations for payroll. And so, you know, I'd love to think that we can give you the balanced view, the learnings, the risks, and help you avoid some of the pitfalls that are inherent in global payroll transformation and in integrating your HCM with all of the global payroll vendors that are out there. So look, we'll touch on what is HCM in 2022? What are the characteristics? What does it look like? And some of the patterns and trends that we see. We'll give some insight into what we think, why integrating is a good idea, and why it helps organizations and the payroll function within a company. Will and I are passionate about what true integration is, you know, and we'll explain that in a little bit more detail. And then we'll leave you hopefully with some thoughts on, as you go into a payroll transformation or a new integration, what are the things that you could pay attention to, and what are the things to watch out for? So my name's Dave Muldoon. I've been the Director of Customer Integration for 3 years with MEDIS, 25 years of global experience on many enterprise-grade projects, both technology, commercial, but in the last 3 years, I've been specializing in payroll and in the HCM market, particularly with Workday, SuccessFactors, Oracle, UKG Pro, and Ceridian. And I'll invite Will to give an insight into his background.
Yeah, hi everybody, Will Murphy here. I'm a senior solution architect with MEDIS. Work with Dave, especially with HCM integration. I spend a lot of time with the customers on projects, integrating their HCM data, reviewing their data, getting it across into the MEDIS platform, and getting the projects live essentially. So our job is mainly to help the customers get from a position of getting their HCM data into a good position across to getting it onto the MEDIS platform and so on to get payrolls completed. I'm 20 years working with different technologies around the integration, and as with Dave, the last 3 years working with HCM integration, especially in the MEDIS.
Thanks, Will, so much. So on to our first theme of the day, HCM in 2022. It's a market that is not quite exploding, but it's growing at a very fast pace, upwards of about $12 billion across, you know, all the recognized vendors, as I said, Workday, Oracle, Ceridian, UKG Pro, SuccessFactors, and some of the trends behind that growth are, you know, digitization. Most organizations are looking to be able to manage their talent mobilization. Like the pandemic has changed the rules for employee engagement. And obviously moving to the cloud as well is another major trend. But I'll take a little look behind some of these trends and just look at this in a little bit more detail. So when we speak to our customers and we get their view of what HCM is, largely speaking, they start in the second pillar, right? So core HR is what most people would recognize as being, you know, the fundamental of a HCM. So, you know, personnel administration, joiners, leavers, and just the basics of employee management. but HCMs these days are literally, they're a platform for end-to-end employee experience management, right? So they have modules for recruitment. So right from the get-go, right from the starting point, before an employee is even hired, they're present on the HCM platform, and the HR people can start to manage the employee onboarding experience. Moving through then into payroll, so you're capturing compliance information, maybe even identity verification, verifying even things like educational qualifications, but also focusing in on country-specific compliance, so items of data that are needed for taxation compliance. It includes modules then for talent management, so performance and goal setting, career planning, training, and then right on to the spectrum of workforce management, where you can manage time entry, overtime, and even deeper schedule management. So these HCMs have really, really broad capabilities, really broad functionalities, and many organizations have invested actually multiple millions. Some of the bigger organizations we deal with have invested quite substantial amounts of money in their HCM platform. And why is that? What are they expecting as the payoff, as the business value? Well, they're expecting a seamless end-to-end employee engagement experience. And now we fully believe like integration plays a huge role in underpinning that seamless experience, because it allows the business process to flow. So, if you have your global payroll platform integrated with HCM, then the HR and payroll folks can trust the business process, that the data is going to flow downstream seamlessly. It's entered once, it's captured once correctly, and it flows down through the business process. And Will and I like to talk about trust in that business process. That's what our business users are looking for, to be able to trust that business process. And so the integration then becomes an enabler, and the business user can start to rely on that business process for routinely and reliably. So, Will, any other thoughts on that? I mean, I think we recognize that integration is, and we'll talk a little bit more and develop on the theme, but it's far more than maybe what people would consider just to be system integration.
Yeah, I think the key point is what you just said about is entering it once and trusting that it will land at its destination. There's a lot of trust in the integration itself. You got to trust the movement. The alternative to it, as we've seen with a lot of customers, is data in many points. So in other words, people have data on Excel sheets on multiple systems. It gets very hard to manage, impossible to manage, one would argue. And I'm amazed at how many companies have managed to survive managing at this stage. And you can see how the HCM is starting to take on these extra points of management, because it means it's in one system. We recognize at the end of the day, Dave, I suppose, that payroll is only one edge of that arm of the HCM. We've learned that there's a lot of input points. New hires, let's say recruitment agencies, different pension systems, they all have their inputs to a HCM so that a customer can manage the viewpoint, not only locally, but globally. They can see all their data in one system. And payroll is just one arm of that. So there's a lot of positives around integration at the moment, not only to payroll, but to a lot of different systems. And payroll is another leg of that journey, let's say, for the piece of information that's being stored on the HCM.
And we're going to touch on, this, if people can remember this landscape, we're going to touch on some of the, the problems that we've encountered in common with our customers. So, things, and we'll explore some of the risks that appear, early on in projects where I guess, issues maybe where the data quality is not where it should be, or the data is not in HCM, it's in third-party systems, and there's a bit of manipulation required. So there's a lot of moving parts on it. I think what is helpful, what we find helpful with, and we find our customers find helpful, is taking that holistic view at the very beginning and mapping out, a picture like this to say, right, where are all the data sets coming from, and how much manual effort is involved today, and then planning, I suppose, an integration roadmap. Quite frankly, it's very rare, Will, that we would see within weeks, let's say, you know, a holistic integration being achieved. But it's definitely it's you know, we're familiar with the challenge, and I guess we've worked with customers a lot, but understanding where the starting point is key, and we'll talk a little more about that as we go through the presentation. What are the benefits for, you know, I guess, all up integration? So getting all of the information into the HCM and allowing that to flow downstream. I mean, number one for me, right, is it enables the automation of the payroll process. So it sounds easy, it sounds simple, but automation is a word that's thrown around the place a lot, right? It can be overused, but what it implies is all the other things that come as a result, right? You've got better confidence in the data, that it's compliant. An example that we like to give, Will, is even tax number validation. If you have automation and integration, you can validate the tax number at source in the HCM, and it can be validated downstream through the integration as well. So you're catching that if anything fails or if anything gets put in incorrectly, it's flagged, and it doesn't flow down through and cause issues all the way downstream.
Yeah, and you're seeing it a bit early, I suppose. The key to what you've just said, especially on the immediate side, is that you see the customer who's integrated can see what's coming off the HCM immediately. Not all the HCMs, let's say, would have the capability to check something, whereas Immedis would give that on the integration straight away. Your data input's being checked as it's coming across. So even a simple tax change, a tax number change by an employee, the format and length and structure would be caught straight away by the Immedis platform based on our own what we call regexes, which is a common term, common format used in technology, just to double check what's being sent across and whether it's acceptable. And the customer can act on that straight away to say, okay, an employee has entered an incorrect tax number, and I can work on that straight away.
And again, right, the automation word, if I can develop on that point, implies that you have timeliness. So you can then potentially start to think about compressing your payroll calendar. Also timeliness and accuracy, right? So again, if the information is entered correctly once, then you've got the integration can preserve that accuracy as it flows down through in a routine and repetitive fashion every single time. We would see customers get benefit from reducing their validation points, right? Where integration is introduced, we definitely would see a reduction in the amount of time that's spent checking data. So just to give some insight to people, I mean, not all of our customers would come to us with zero integration. Some customers would have come to us and they would have had integration with other global payroll providers. So you can see that they've already received some benefit from that previous integration, and that's a great thing. And the data quality will be higher as a result. So and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes about the maturity of that. But we definitely would see evidence of that. The reduced level of effort and validation across our customer landscape. And then, you know, I suppose
we seem to have lost you, Dave.
Payroll people in our customer landscape where they're constrained time-wise and they're up against hard deadlines. So reducing those queries is a really, really valuable thing for them. This slide just captures quickly some thoughts that we have around why I suppose integration is it's a business strategy, and if people think about it as a business strategy, it lifts it up. And Will and I have developed the thought process in dialogue with our customers that we look beyond systems integration. So having systems talk to each other is almost a basic at this point. And when we talk with prospects and customers and they present that they don't have any HCM integration with any of their either benefits providers, or they haven't had integration with their payroll systems, we typically would see all of the problems that you see on the left, right? So you have expensive administration, you have manual data uploads, sometimes even manipulation of data, right? Well, that would be a common thing where integration is not in play. You often find people having the freedom, I suppose, to create their own workarounds.
But that's a key word there. It's the freedom which leads to errors. Freedom,
and
as
again,
we
I
often
think,
say,
you know, things like reporting and data inconsistency that's a downstream impact of the lack of integration. And then, you know, risk starts to creep in terms of non-compliance. On the flip side, and I must stress that, you know, thinking about this as a business strategy is really important, because what that means is you can't just assume that, okay, if I plug two systems together, I'm automatically going to have all of the benefits, right? It's a little bit more than that, and we'll talk about that as well. But you should, in principle, have a single source of truth now in your HCM, and you can focus on business users getting that data correct, and then it flows reliably. But again, there are things that you have to pay attention to. It would give you the opportunity to have reliable, accurate oversight. But again, not every integration provides a digestible report or highlights the errors intelligently. Okay, so I think I would urge, you know, the people on the webinar they should be considering these things and looking for them, be it from their vendor or be it from their in-house technology teams. That, you know, the integration is great, systems integration is very good, but there are additional layers of value and tools and you know, I suppose audits, intelligence that needs to be built in or looked for, as well as a capability. So Mel, I think we'll go to our first poll question then, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, okay, let's go for it. So the first question is, in your current organisation, are the HCM and payroll systems integrated? So it's yes or no. So guys, which do you think is going to be the result on this? Will, I don't know, do you know what the result's going to be? Or you're on mute, Will.
Sorry, yeah. Oh, this could be 50-50 in my opinion. It really depends. We in my opinion, it's could be 50. I'm going 50-50. I'm putting my my $5 on 50-50. Dave might go less than that. I'm not really sure where his money is, but I'm going 50-50. It just depends. It's very interesting what we've seen down through the years where people have used maybe an old integrated system. One of the first ones that some of the HCMs developed would be traditionally what we have. If they have integration, they might have an older version and they haven't quite moved on to some of the newer, like the Workdays of this world would have PCOF and Peachy. I know I'm getting technical, but the PCOF would be a traditional integration a lot would have used and still do have. And, you know, we're on the more modern one, which is the Peachy, and we process the Peachy stronger. It's a more effective change mechanism. So I'm going 50-50 here.
50-50, okay. And Dave, I don't know if can you hear us okay?
It's okay, my headset actually cut out there, so briefly apologies.
We lost you slightly earlier on, but you came back to us. So so you're happy for me to, I'll end the poll because we've got quite a good response from people, and I'm going to end the poll. And I have to say, Will, you're pretty on the mark there. So can you see that? It's yes 47%, no 53%. So congratulations, you do know your industry very well.
Thank you. Dave will have to give me the $5. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll pass it over to you guys.
Thanks so much. So let's move on, right? True integration. This is a bit of a passion of Will and I. Again, it's developing on the theme that, and maybe we're betraying our technical roots here, but you know, the technologies that we have in the cloud, modern platforms that are available, we're almost saying, right, that connecting two systems to make them talk to each other is easier, I suppose, than it ever has been, is the best way of saying it. But true integration is a much more than that now. And today in 2022, true integration for payroll, from a payroll perspective, should be a lot more than that. So we're saying that true integration is the seamless flow of integration through an entire business process, regardless of the source of truth, and creates that reliable and unified user experience. So we would urge people to look beyond systems integration. This picture here would show, your typical cloud architecture, your typical landscape that from a technical perspective. And we would say to people, that this kind of picture would have been, 5 years ago would have been exciting for payroll folks and exciting for HR folks. But we're now saying you've got to look way beyond that to an integrated business process. Some of the things we would say for people to consider is to look at detailed models of how your staff carry out their work. Like what does the business process look like? What are their information needs through that end-to-end process? Will, you might talk about, we know we've got so much experience in the last while on how oftentimes payroll and HR people even don't have control over the data. They don't have control over the systems. In fact, it's actually more common now, where the control and even sometimes visibility is not available to them. You might talk for a few minutes about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the lessons we've learned over the last few years around where, especially in the global pay side of the business, where we're trying to say to customers, okay, you need X and Y fields, and all your employees have X and Y values included in their system. And we've learned that the payroll team will come to us and say, yeah, that's okay, but we have to talk to the HR team, our HRS team, and sometimes we hear that term being called a lot in different customers. And we begin to understand why that's the case, because we've got to understand, and we've understood that, that HR data in HCM, is doing a purpose for other people as well, and other integrations. We're not the only integration in the climate or in the ecosphere. We are one of many in many places, like a new hire system or a hiring system or a pension system. They all have their requirements on the HCM, and that's generally controlled by the HR managers and the HRS team, as some people like to call it. And therefore, we've learned that we have to be clear and very concise when we're starting off projects, especially in the early days when we're setting them up, that they understand what the requirements are, what we require for each country, and what needs to be gathered from all the employees at the beginning so that their data is complete. Therefore, we give enough time, as we feel, inside in the projects to make sure that the customer goes away and explores what data is on their system, and also match that against our requirements and match that against other requirements on the system as well, as I said, for the pension system, the HR system, the recruitment system, etc. So there has to be good, strong connection between all the teams on the system. We will make that clear at the beginning. Say, okay, the payroll team, I know you guys are driving the project, and maybe the owners of the project internally, but you need your HR person, HR manager connected, you need your technology team connected, you need your finance team connected, so that all the effects of this integration are felt and known, and any changes are well explored and well cleared up within the company, not to mind the project that we're performing with that customer.
Apologies, Will, my headset is, can you hear me okay? I'm back now.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so the joys of headset charging. Thank you for picking that up there. So I guess the thought process there, and we're trying to maybe shift people's perspectives from thinking about systems integration, because that is a technology requirement, but it's more I think for the payroll and HR folks, when they're going through or thinking about the transformation, is to be really, really focused on the business process, and I guess demanding more from everybody in terms of the global payroll vendor, their internal technology teams, and maybe even the HCM vendor may also be a stakeholder in that conversation as well, if they're, you know, providing services to those teams. So it's looking up and looking out, I guess, is the call to action, right, for the audience on the call. Some things that might help you when you're thinking about your current position and maybe where you would like to get to over the course of, you know, the next, I don't know, 12, 18 months, is gauging the current maturity of the organization with regards to integration. And we would see very many of our customers on level 0 to level 2. And I guess the purpose, right, of the transformation is to, you know, not just to maybe outsource the function, but also to achieve that digitization strategy, that strategy where you're getting to business process integration. And some of the characteristics of that then are what we would call intelligent automation. And that is not actually complex. From my perspective, intelligent automation is where it's made simple enough for the end user to understand what's going wrong. Particularly, you know, when things actually go wrong, can the business end user, is the business end user informed first and foremost, and can they react to it in a quick and easy way? I think too many times, Will, we've seen integrations that are actually very have a really high degree of maturity in terms of complexity, right? And, you know, volume, they can handle any volume. They operate at high frequency. They can deal with many different data types, but yet when something goes wrong, they revert back to just dropping all those errors into a detailed log that's buried in the system. You know, that for us is that's not true integration, right? That's not intelligent automation.
No, it goes back to, I suppose, what you said earlier, in that, you know, the client, the objective of the customer for us would be, at the end of the day, they need to make a decision on 2% of the data that's coming through. Now I'm using 2% as now, the 2% that didn't go through, whereas they're happy with the 98%, and it doesn't cost them a lot of time to review those 98% of the changes, for example. Otherwise, we might still go back to Excel sheets and humans looking at them, because we're defeating the purpose then. It's about getting quick actions on the 2% that didn't happen. But so that's really what true intelligent integration is. It's easy in this day and age when you look at the HCMs, the integration of on the raw data, the integration of moving parts from the HCM to the platform is not a big thing. You know, we've got internet is there. There's volume, as you say, you know, from compared to years ago. There's the volumes and things moving a data. It's quick, it's easy, it's not a problem. It's getting that really structured and well automated and good reaction, good explanation in a usable format that the customer can make a decision on what's happening, the changes coming from the HCM. As we've realized all along, the payroll people have no input on the HR data per se. They won't have seen the human who is doing a job for them. Okay, a simple example, some person who's putting paint in a paint pot. Those people working don't know anything about payroll, they just want paid at the end of the day. So they're entering data on a HCM system and they expect the data to seamlessly fall through to the payroll. So they don't want any complications. The payroll team don't control that to some extent. They can with their business process on the HCM, but they want that seamlessly gone through integration. It's not a simple matter of moving a piece of information from A to B. There's a lot of structure, a lot of intelligence on top of that. I guess the big thing for me in this diagram, and we've talked about it before, is the fact that a lot of customers are in that level 0 to level 1 area. And it's interesting to the poll of 50-50, because we would be in that kind of level ground that they would have. A lot of them will be manual uploads, and a lot of them will be flat file exchange. A lot of flat file exchange, let's say, in older technologies, we would call, as technologists, we would say that they're older technologies. So as they say, the integration of moving data isn't difficult. It's getting it right on the HCM system and getting it right all the time on the HCM system and getting it right on the payroll system as well. So it matches up, and also then that we're calling out any differences seamlessly.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit later in the segment about, you know, the role that APIs play I guess, Will, when you talk about APIs or application programming interfaces, that would be typically level 4, right? Level 4 and above.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, you know, things like a flat file exchange. So if you have a CSV file that's being exchanged, and that's your type of integration, typically that is quite rigid. And when you describe it as being rigid, it means that the system is expecting it exactly in that structure. And if you're missing a comma, or if you're missing a data point in it, the integration is not going to react well. Isn't that fair? That's because of the older technology types that we see.
Agreed. You're looking at the APIs, add a layer of expertise in that. You're looking at the value straight coming across in the API. It's secure as well. It's a lot secure. An API is a lot secure when it's traveling from the HCM to the intermediate system. We would say a lot of the older systems of moving a CSV file as older technology and not as secure. We would say verify the API is stronger in that regard.
Where would you sit on FTP? We still see it. We still see a lot of it.
Yeah, FTP is old. Yeah, FTP is old, not secure. We see SFTP. There's some HCMs are still moving SFTP for files as well. And we would have strong communications with the HCMs to say we think you should join us in modern APIs. Are a lot lighter, a lot more structured, can be a lot secure as well. It can be secured better than a moving of files. At the end of the day, if you move a file, it's still a human readable file that's been moved, and it's still a format that can be disrupted very easily. Whereas the movement of APIs is a lot more secure. Yeah, it's just not as secure as SFTP and FTP. You know, a lot of things has moved on since then, technologies.
Yeah, and just for, I suppose, maybe for non-technical people on the audience, like the level 2 and level 3, you know, typically what's happening is that you have a file being sent, you know, to a folder potentially, and then it's being picked up and forwarded on to a system. And you know, for technology people now, in the context of data security, having files sitting in locations, be they even in secure locations, is a massive headache. It's a nightmare. And then, you know, tracking who has access to those flat files and who can take them home or where they can get distributed for. So, you know, this is where I suppose data security starts to come into play, and organizations want to move up the maturity scale too from that perspective. So there's a number of different reasons why organizations want to move along the scale, move the maturity, move along the maturity scale and model. Data security is a huge topic. It's becoming almost, I suppose, is it becoming the most important topic? Will, when we're talking to customers, I think it's definitely up in the top 2, top 3.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say even our on our side, our pre-sales guys would see it as one of the top questions coming out of the scope of works or those conversations with customers at the very beginning is data security. It's been so important since GDPR came in. You know, is it 10 years ago GDPR came in 2012? So it's been one of the top questions. It's even looked over the payroll itself in some of the questions. You know what's to say the security like, how are we moving data? Even the HCMs are talking about. You can see it with the HCM conversations. They're looking at their security methods of moving data and downgrading some of their old methods and moving to more secure methods as well.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, helping people, I guess, gauge where they are on the scale is a good way. I think for us, it's about context, right? Giving the customer the context that, okay, recognizing that we're at level 0, level 1 or level 2, and then you can start to plot the way forward. And that's, you know, part of that planning and change management piece. But it's really important to know where you are for context. Okay, switching gears slightly, but on the same topic, we ran a survey, I think it was late last year, with the GPA on this landscape of integration and HCM. And, you know, some of the results were not surprising. Over 2/3 had a HCM solution in place. And, you know, a good chunk of those, almost over 1/3, had an integration with a cloud-based payroll solution in place, right? So they were, I suppose, the statistics that maybe didn't surprise us. I guess on the right, Phil, we there are some numbers here that maybe did surprise us, right?
Yeah, I think it goes back to our 50-50 poll earlier. It's very amazing the quantity, you know, the comparison. Like we were discussing earlier, the 49.3% is a manner of which we could break that down a bit more if we were really we could have broke down a bit more if we were really talking to the people, and we'd see it in customers where integration but manual intervention. God, that takes so many different levels of manual intervention. It's such a general concept. You know, they could have integration with an old protocol, they could have integration and a lot of integration, but you know, because let's say some of their pensions aren't going straight into the HCM, they have to manually intervene there and they have to move it across to the payroll system. Then somebody say the core record, a simple first name, second name, and date of birth could be moving across through integration, but everything else is going through manually. So that has a real variance. That 49.3% has a real variance, in my opinion. It could be anything in that regard. The old pie chart where the 36.1%, the 49.3% and the 14.6% could all mix together at different levels. And that's what we see across the board. It's a mix of all kinds of things when you talk to customers. They have a lot of information moving, and then others would have very little information moving through integration.
Yeah. I think it's very encouraging to see the 15% of organizations would consider themselves to have seamless integration.
Yeah.
It proves that it's possible. You know, certainly as one of the global payroll vendors, we know that it is possible. And I guess as an industry, right, we are all striving to get there for our business users and our end user communities. It's probably lower than we'd like, you know, and I guess the 36% with no integration, I mean, you know, it's frightening to think what's going on in their world, right? You can imagine the risk, and maybe you can imagine some of the business problems that would occur on a weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly basis for every payroll cycle. You know, if you're shipping data files around the place, you're having to manipulate data files. Like, I guess the risk is starting to become systemic, nearly almost, from a data security perspective, and for data breach perspective. I think it's going to become an imperative, in my view, within the next 24 months, that organizations, I think, you know, if they're reporting data breaches and they have to be, and they're asked to describe what level of integration or systems security protocols they have in place, and they don't have any, that's going to be a very difficult conversation, I think, with data controllers and data protection commissioners. So Mel, I think we're just about on track for our second poll.
Yes, we are. So let me just get this one slightly longer. What in your organisation is the biggest barrier to integration? Company culture, no experience with technology, lack of executive support, or siloed departments? So I'm going to launch that now. What do you think is going to be the top one for this one?
I get Dave answer this, and I got the last question.
Yeah, right. I think company culture, because I think unless, it's such a multidisciplinary thing to get right, that unless you have, your IT function, your finance people, your HR people, and your payroll people talking to each other, and I don't mean aligned, I mean literally just talking to each other, that these things don't even get off the ground, quite frankly. But look, I'll be very interested to hear what people say.
Well, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think this might vary a lot. Maybe this could base off what type of company it is as well. Like, no experience with technology. If you were a technologist company, and we've seen it, the general access to technology people is quicker and easier. Let's say if you were dealing with a company that does deals in technology, then access to technology, the basis of the communication is technology already. So I think this could vary on different types of companies, different types of people, different types of just general what the people do day to day. And it comes like being in technology companies and coming across, if there's a bed of technology there already, it might be an easier conversation, one would argue, when the payroll team come along and say, oh, I want to do technology to move a file or move something from left to right to HCM. But in other companies, it might be different. Okay,
right. Well, we're going to put it to a close. So I usually like my magic number of at least 70%. So if you haven't answered, if you just want to quickly jump on before I finish it. Okay, right, so I'll end the poll now. Okay, so here are the results. So pretty mixed bag, I would say. Company culture, 34%. No experience required. No experience with technology. 14%. Lack of executive support, 22%, and silo departments, 31%. So sort of really what you guys thought. I think there.
Yeah, really interesting. I think, you know, it does give weight to the argument, to Will's point, that it's you know, it's many things. There are many things to address when you're talking about building this integration right across different, you know, departments or across different functions. So yeah, you know, again, on the next slide we talk a little bit about this, right? In terms of those barriers, right? I can move on to this. You know, wrapped up in those points are, you know, the three main areas, but looking behind these, right? So where are the hidden costs to when you're talking about this new technology adoption? I think for us, Will, the hidden costs are when we've discovered and customers discover they're about to kick off on the project and they're about to get going, and we're on a tight deadline, say a 12-week timeline to get the outcomes delivered, and all of a sudden we discover that maybe data does not exist in the HCM, or the data quality, you know, banking information, that's always a killer. Banking information is not present in the HCM. All of a sudden, customer has to go and you know, let's call it, they have to scramble. They have to scramble in the background, get the data cleansed, get it sourced. And because we want to achieve that integration landscape, we're trying to populate it into HCM. So I love to look behind these barriers, right? And those hidden costs can be substantial, right?
Yeah, and as you say, it shows in the customer engagements that we've done. And I go back to a slide you did at the very beginning. If we would advise any customer, even today, if they weren't even to integrate, and they weren't even talking about it, just to have a good vision of where all your data is. I think it's the one thing that we start off maybe before a project. We walk in and I say, do you have a good understanding of where all your data is? And we'd always go through the basic concepts of, you know, the core record, first name, second name, recurring payments, recurring deductions, one-time payments, customer country-specific information, banking, leave of absence. Where is this data sitting right now? Is it an Excel sheet on somebody's desk? Is it in the incumbent's payroll system? Is it on 2 or 3 different systems? If it's a global situation, one would say it can be localized. So the data can be localized in a country with a team in that country, and it's not visual by everyone around the world as to where the data is. A simple thing just to understand where your data, your basic data is at this stage right now in your company. Where is your data? Where is it stored? You know, and then figure out how you think you can get that data to the HCM. That'd be and that's where the cost comes in, Dave, because people, when we get down to brass tacks and start talking to people and customers, where's your data? And then they go, okay, it's over here. Now I have to go talk to the HR team. They need to move the data from one place to another. That's going to cost us time and effort, and didn't really think about it at the beginning, you know. That's a real case that really comes out strong.
Definitely. I think the second point for me is not as relevant. In the last probably 18 months, I think we've seen, you know, less and less of the legacy systems, and I suppose, you know, maybe, but the audience certainly would, I'm sure certain members of the audience would have, you know, legacy systems in place, right? I guess for us, it hasn't just been as high as previous. Going behind the third point is staffing. I think it's related to being prepared as well. Will, you know, looking behind it, if you need to go and scramble for that data quality, you know, the payroll folks who are operating the payroll are already busy people, and now they're involved in a transformation project. They absolutely do not have bandwidth to go and start sifting through or sourcing data, right?
And it's a cost. And it's a cost, isn't it? Again, 3 and 1 are quite linked, and it goes back to the data. Know where your data is, know exactly where it is, so you can judge the 3 versus the number 1 here, the cost versus the staffing, as you said, those people in number 3 are very, very busy month to month, bi-weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, bi-monthly. They don't have a lot of time, so they need help at that stage that you're doing your transformation, which comes against costs, and that comes into effect then straight away.
The other dimension to this, I guess, is, you know, when you talk about new technology, and we'll develop on this point as well, is it shouldn't cost or it shouldn't take additional staff, quite frankly, when you're using a new system. So if you're adopting a new global payroll system, which is seamlessly integrated, it should be intuitive enough, it should be user-friendly enough that you don't have to bear these costs, or you don't have to hire, you know, a whole bunch of additional people to operate or be trained. So I think there is, you know, I guess when you're looking for partners or when you're looking for a solution, bear these things in mind, that they shouldn't be presented to you. They shouldn't actually happen, and you should look behind. I suppose, you know, look behind the sales story, right, to make sure that some of those things do not appear. Okay, again, we'll coming on to, I suppose, the final leg, talking about technology, and we'll maybe hopefully just keep this understandable for people who are not, you know, technologists on the call. But this concept of true integration, again, it's more than system integration, right? It's much more than just system integration these days that we would see. I'll let you talk very briefly to these, and we have a quick slide on each one then.
Yeah, we built this earlier. It's mostly, again, going back to the story we've told so far. You know, it's not as simple as moving data from HCM straight into an immediate platform or into any payroll system. It's about good data being moved on intelligent APIs into a system that's been verified and certified. In other words, the groundwork has been done by the payroll system with the HCM to understand the data, to understand the intricacies of the HCM and how that HCM moves data and stores data. It's very important, because the payroll system can have its own rules about, I want data in X format. The HCM may not have it in that format, and it may need a manipulation to do that. So that's why having your integration verified and certified is very, very important. It also shows that there's a good connection between the HCM and the payroll vendor. In other words, they've had communications, they've understood each other's layouts, they understand communication-wise what fixes might be coming down the line, what's on each other's roadmap, what's coming down the track. So it's very important, the certified and verified part of the business. Good data is what we've talked about from the slide 1. It's crucial. It's crucial that there's good data, you know.
Super, yeah. The slide here just captures the points on the APIs. Thomas Otter is one of the board members for Immedis, and he's been involved in the world of HCM and payroll for quite a number of years. And I guess, you know, some of the points there, I mean, an API enables the movement of data between systems. That's the fundamental thing. But what we would be looking for, what our audience should be looking for, intelligent error handling for when things go wrong. I can't stress enough how important that is, and how much of a game changer that will be for business users. We also would say that the APIs need to be able to make decisions based on business events, and we'll, you know, some examples we've talked about there is that you might have an employee that has come through the HCM as a rehire. Now, for whatever reason, they may be present in the system as an active employee. So the integration has to recognize that, okay, something has gone wrong here, but guess what? I'm not just going to completely fail and blank out and throw an error. I'm going to say, actually, well, the outcome is pretty much in line. I just might need to update the contract type, or I might need to check the dates and amend the, you know, the assignment dates or whatever. So the employee will still get paid. They'll still be treated as an active employee, but you can react to those decisions. It has the intelligence layer built in. And then again, you know, top and tailed with sort of fundamentals, right? That high volumes and high frequency should be like almost a prerequisite. Cannot emphasize enough again, the data quality at source is fundamental to everything. And we like to think of the payroll data kind of across 3 different categories. So the core record would be the simple employee demographic information. And then we like to think of the country specific or local payroll and the bank details as being the second set of information, if you like. And then the third set is the variable data that comes, the changes that happen from payroll to payroll. And we pay real strong attention. We have, I guess, you know, sometimes different validations or different contexts for those 3 data sets, Will, right?
Sorry, there's strong rules. There should be strong rules against all of that. And as we say, we're trying to build, I suppose, Dave, since slide 1, a consistent story. Good data moved in, transported across an intelligent API, verified by the API to give the client enough information to make the correct decision, whether any inputs need to be changed or an employee on the HCM has broken a business rule and hasn't entered data correctly, and you have to go chase that up, especially in some of these payrolls that are very tight on time. You know, you need that, the client's payroll person needs to have bandwidth to look at a problem, go fix it, and get it back into the system so the payroll can be paid on time. So that's what all those core checks are in those systems.
Agreed. Certification and verification, I think we treat this very seriously, and we think, you know, the industry treats it very seriously, which is a great thing. You know, why is it important? All of the HCM vendors that I called out, you know, the Workdays of this world, and SuccessFactors, Oracle, Ceridian, UKG Pro, would put the global payroll vendors through their paces, be looking for evidence of test scenarios. They'd be looking for evidence of having supported those scenarios in various different ways. You know, the collaboration and continuous improvement is really an advantage of the certification, where we get to, I guess, represent some customers, right? We might come from time to time with a really edge case business scenario that we experience in the HCM, and we'd say, guys, have you considered this? What can we tell our customer to do here in this scenario? So that, you know, we're plugged into that advisory and collaboration piece. We also would represent customers and say, you know, our customers are looking for this feature. They'd like to take advantage of it more. What is on the roadmap? What can we be telling customers to be preparing for? So that continuous improvement is really bringing a lot of value. And you know, it's only when you are certified that you can participate in a lot of those conversations. And lastly, for me, the local fluency. What I call local fluency is that the global payroll vendor has gone and certified not just the feature set, but also the country. And our customers can take advantage of that. They don't have to go and repeat those tests. They can rely on the compliance data points that are configured, you know, in the HCM and in the global payroll platform. And they can trust the business process, right? So that's why certification is actually really, really important. It will enable, you know, again, that trust in that business process. So we're almost on the last leg, and we might take some questions just at the very end. The last couple of points, I guess, when members of the audience are either embarking on, you know, the next wave of integration maturity, or they're about to start on the journey and go through a transformation, what are the things you should be looking out for? Well, we believe that the global payroll vendor drives the success of the implementation and should drive the success of the implementation. We in Amedis have this concept of build, operate, run, which means that we have that feedback loop. We build our integrations and we build the core feature sets. The same teams operate and help customers adopt and take advantage and embed them. And the same team also participates in the running and the support and maintenance of them. So you're getting that entire feedback loop all the way through the journey. For the customer organization, some really important things. the position of payroll in the organization on the right-hand side, that for us is a very big area for consideration. And by that we mean that, you know, you may have local payroll teams who are operating running a very tight ship, operating a really nice process, but it's local to that market. And then all of a sudden, you're going to wash through with a global model, and it can have massive impact. Also, from another dimension, if you look at it from the point of view where payroll maybe don't have control over certain data, but yet they're absolutely enabled, and it's vital that that data is managed and prepared for them. So that's a huge thing, you know, the context of where payroll is in the organization. Exec sponsorship, you know, again, fundamental for the times for which something unplanned comes up and maybe additional resource or a rapid decision is required on something. That exec sponsorship is vital. Corporate memory is really important because, you know, payroll is very much a specialist domain, and, you know, we sometimes find that people who have been operating payrolls for many years are leaving the organization maybe, or maybe have left the organization, and a lot of that corporate memory is lost and gone, and no one can unpick why it was decided to do that way or where that data is now actually coming from. So the corporate memory is important. On the fundamentals on the bottom, you know, for us, for Will, we when we engage with a customer, we're looking for the finance person, we're looking for the IT person, we're looking for the HCM person, right? We're looking for the integration guy, the payroll people, the HR people. So we're getting them all into the room and going, guys, we are one team now. You know, that's and here we're all playing a key role, and we have to embrace the change management.
Agreed, and I think
which is huge.
It's crucial that in the project, I suppose, for anyone who's dealing with a payroll operator down the line, that they bring them in good and early. You know, even if you're preparing for a project, have a look around at how many points, how many people or many departments need the data that you're going to control, or you're not going to control, that are controlled by the HR team, that you need to move to a payroll system. It's good to have them all written down, and you know who you're talking to at any one stage. You need buy-in from all departments. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, look, the last slide is from when you are looking at your global payroll vendor, you should be thinking about, you know, what happens when things go wrong? What are the security guarantees? Are they certified? You know, and some of the things around the circle are literally fundamental, like, you know, frequency and scalability and stuff. But certainly, the what happens when things go wrong conversation is a really important conversation to have. Mel, if we have time, we might share one or two thoughts on this, but this is where we see the world going. And we, you know, would ask the audience to consider these in the course of the next, you know, as they embark on their programs. But intelligent user interfaces and guided processes is something that you should be demanding from vendors. Employee mobile apps to drive engagement, and also ownership of data is massive. And we see a trend from our customers, certainly, where they're looking to be able to self-manage the process and have direct control and access to the process. So look, hopefully that has given the audience some insights into how we approach and how we think about integration. And we'd love, you know, hopefully we've tried to make it as practical as we can, taking examples from the last number of years, and we'd love to take some questions if we have time, Mel. But if not, we can certainly follow up. And
yeah, we've got a couple of questions. Fortunately, we're just running out of time, but we can I'll share those with you if that's okay, and if we can go back to the people that have asked questions at a later date, that'd be great. One thing that we have been asked a number of occasions is if the slides will be shared, and also the recording. The recording will be made available within 24 hours. We'll send everyone an email with all the information on, so that you can view this again or share it with colleagues. So just want to say to both of you, Dave and William. It's been a really informative webinar, really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of people have also, because they've left messages on the chat. So thank you so much for, spending time with us today. And thank you for everyone that has joined us. And we hope to see you all again very soon on one of our other webinars. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.